Hello, Pauper fans. It's going to be a quick one. I wanted to do a bit of a review on whatever is going on with the Hawkeye's bow combo in Pauper. So, first off, this is one of my first videos here, so please go subscribe. I'm going to try to make a bit more content in English and, to practice my language and all that. And I think it's going to be quite interesting. So now, the main thing here, the main story here is Hawkeye's bow, and this card combos with Secret of Skybreak. Let me just show it quickly. So Secret of Skybreak is a creature that can just untap itself, and the Hawkeye's bow, whenever the creature becomes tapped, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Easy to see, this is a 2-card combo that just wins the game outright, and it's very powerful. Both of these cards are common, so this is legal in Pauper. Now, the first thing that came to mind when people saw this combo was the following deck. Okay, I grabbed any list here, doesn't really matter, but the combo was Basking Broodscale and Sadistic Glee, which it was a very similar combo feeling of 2 cards, very cheap, based on a creature, and if you combo, then you just win the game. Well, the main difference here is that Basking Broodscale combo created an infinitely big creature, an infinite mana, an infinite dice, and enters triggers. That normally means that you are going to win the game outright, but if you don't have the outlet, if you don't have the munitions, the Nadir, Nightblade here, these two are the win conditions, or you don't have the fixing like Energy Refractor to filter the mana and to draw the cards enough to win the game, and your opponent can just block, if they block the Basket Broodscale, then you are not winning that turn. It was a 2-card combo that was cheap enough, that was very strong, of course, it was very powerful. But one of the things that it had was that it was not really a 2-card combo, because you needed to have a third card in order to win the game, and sometimes even using like Writhing Chrysalis as another creature that grew infinitely big to just attack with your creatures. Now, this has a bit of an upside in comparison to our combo, to our new combo, and this is that it doesn't require the creature to not have Summoning Sickness. So you can just play the Burst Scale, that turn, play the Sadistic Glee, generate infinite mana, and if you find one of your win conditions, then you just win. Now, this doesn't happen with Hawkeye's bow combo because you need to have the Secret of Skybreak, not have Summoning Sickness. There are ways to circumvent that, but let's just keep that in mind. That's another thing that this combo requires that this doesn't. But the main thing I think people are oversigning is that this combo doesn't win outright. If you just do it, your opponent blocks, next turn just play like a, cast down into your Brew Scale, you're just left with basically nothing. This combo had a lot of redundancy and a lot of cards, so that doesn't happen. It has, in this case, it's a random list, but it has 2 outlets to win the game, 1 outlet to gain infinite life, Energy Refractor to filter the mana into infinite colored mana. That normally means that you win the game in that moment, and it has more creatures that just grew infinitely big. So a lot of ways of supporting your combo, right? And I would argue this doesn't require that much, right? Doesn't require that much because you just need this creature to not have Summoning Sickness, and then you're done. Basically, if you win the game, you win the game, and that's very, very important. Now, this combo, again, has a build here that is based on Writhing Chrysalis, because it works so well with Basking Broodscale, and it needs to be on 2 specific colors, which is, obviously needs to be Golgari at least, because you need to play Broodscale into Glee, right? So if you want to play Chrysalis, now you're playing Jund. Now, this deck almost exclusively was Jund. There were a couple of builds of Golgari, but in the end, it ended up being not good enough. Now, that means that this deck always is Jund. So we are used to use this combo on Jund. And Jund contains, red and green. So it feels so easy to just cut these 8 cards and put the cards of the Hawkeye combo. That means that people have done that. In fact, if we go and watch, let me see, here is the first list that Kalikai's created. Of course, huge props to him, very big content creator. I really like his videos, but he created a list that was using basically the same engine of Eviscerators inside, Wellsprings, and Duress as interaction. And the Chrysalis as the top end. Now, the main issue I see with this is that the synergies that have that made you use those cards is not here. You are not required to play black, right? In the previous combo, you needed to play black because you had to play Glee. So that means that, of course, we want to play black because we are forced to. But in this deck, you are not required to play black. So why are you playing black? Well, in this case, basically forcing black so he can have a lot of card draw and duress. And the main issue I see with this is that black is your third color, right? Because your main color should be the colors that force your combo. So you want to go turn 1 Hawkeye's Bow, turn 2 Secret of Skybreak, and win, right? So you need to have a lot of sources of red and green. But if you are having your main interaction and can draw suites in black, that means that most of your mana base is going to be black. Of course, this mana base is kind of rough. It's just created randomly, but the point stands, right? Most of the cards that this deck plays are black. And red is kind of a splash. Now that's a lot of work. In this case, he just put like the glue of the barrels of blasting jelly just to make the deck work. Now that's fine and all. Of course, it's an early build, no big deal. But the main issue stands that you are playing a lot of black cards for no real reason, because you could play card draw in red, right? We have nowadays a lot of card draw in all the colors. You could play more bitter unions and ways of using that advantage, right? So for example, one of the builds that I created, this is a page we created on my YouTube channel that I speak in Spanish. Go watch it if you are interested in that. And one of the builds I created was, let me see, Madness, right? So this Madness combo list, for example, is just straight up red-green and uses, here the Mentor's Axe is a Hawkey's Bow. Of course, we didn't have that kind of model to create the deck, but it's just a deck that uses a lot of card draw that discards cards, and then a couple of cards with Madness in Basking Root Koala, and, well, kind of Sneaky Snacker. You can also play other cards that synergize with this, right? In this case, I'm playing Benevolent Rumble. You probably don't need it, and you can play more cards with Madness. Now, that means that you can have more cards that actually work with your card advantage. You don't have to have a third color. Your mana base can be way cleaner. And as you can see, most of my lands enter untapped. And that means that you're going to more likely be able to do turn 1 Hawkey's Bow into turn 2 Secret of Skybreak and turn 3 win or whatever, right? You are more likely to be able to play your combo pieces on curve. Again, this deck used to be Jund because it was required to. We are not required to, so we shouldn't be building Jund just because of it. And as I was looking at it, oh wait, I lost the video, one sec. In that Mills guy's video, he placed this list, which is again based on Jund. In this case, a bit better built because it has Chromatic Star instead of the barrels, and it doesn't have. Oh, yeah, it has duress, but it has a couple of Malevolent Rumbles, a couple of munitions. The deck is very similar. Now, the main issue I see with this is, again, we are not required to play black. We are not required to play Cleansing Wildfire to fix our mana because we don't need to play black. So if you're not playing 3 colors, you normally don't need to play Cleansing Wildfire, and you can be a bit more clean on your build. Now, you may see Makeshift Munitions, and this is a bit of a head scratcher to me. Of course, it works well with the Ichor Wellsprings and all the artifacts you're playing, but if we go back to the original deck, the Munitions was actually a win condition because you created infinitely amount of tokens that you can sacrifice, right? And you have the mana to pay for the Munitions. So it was a win condition on the deck. But in our new deck, it doesn't do that, right? It doesn't do anything, in fact. It's just basically a bad removal spell. So my question is, why are they playing this, right? And I think this is pretty clear. A thing of just copying and pasting and replacing a couple of cards, which is, of course, they are content creators. They are trying to put out the videos as fast as possible. This video that Neil guys created was actually was a bit edited, a lot of edition going on. So it probably takes a bit of time to actually edit and work on that. So it makes sense that they are not going to have the best possible list. But I think that the main issue I see here is that playing Jund doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, there are other synergies here that I see that they are not being used to their fullest. In this deck, for example, we are playing Deadly Dispute because it works so well with the combo. You have infinite things to sacrifice and infinitely colorless mana. If you have 1 black mana, then you can change your Deadly Disputes because they create a treasure, so you can draw from the treasure itself, fixing your mana until you find a refractor and win condition. So all of that is great. Eviscerator's Insight, again, you're playing infinite mana, so you don't mind paying so much mana in order to draw a couple of cards. But the main issue I see is that, well, we are not doing that. In fact, if we are comboing, we just win. So I think that having cards that work when you are comboing in this case, all of these cards, Energy Refractors, Deadly Disputes, Munitions, all of these cards are just good in this deck when you're comboing. In fact, I would argue even Chrysalis. Of course, it's a great card. No one divides that. It's a great magic card. It just blocks so well. It does everything right. But it was also a combo piece in this deck, right? Again, if you combo, you make your Chrysalis big enough that you can attack with pseudo haste, right? You can just have a Chrysalis in play, pay a blue scale, play the Glee, combo infinitely, and attack with the Chrysalis that infinite. That's really good. But we don't need that, right? So I would argue having Chrysalis, of course, is tempting because it's on color and it's such a good card, but it's not really required. If you can combo fast, you don't really need Chrysalis. In fact, the first build I made was this, which is a turbo combo list. As you can see, it has a lot of fast mana, and the idea is to combo as fast as possible. I don't think this is going to be a winner of a deck, because especially early on, people are going to just target this deck super hard, and they're going to try to kill the creature as fast as possible. So I don't think going one turn early is going to be much of a boon. But this deck maximizes on the chances of having an starting hand that just combos. In fact, we have an extra combo with the Hunger Scrounger. So the Hunger Scrounger with the Secret of Skybreath lets you loot your hand for free. And once you loot your hand, you just find a couple of Lotus Petals and the Hawkeye's Bow. You play it, you equip it, and then you start the tapping and dealing infinite damage. That makes it so this deck can combo with 2 ways and has 8 cards that are comboing with the Secret of Skybreak. That reduces the amounts of mulligans you have, and that means that you can just keep 5 card hands that combo, or 6 card hands that combo with a Scrounger. Now, an additional note, you can actually play like 1 Whiteout and Snowlands, and you don't even need to have a lot of cards in hand for this combo to work, which is kind of cool. Now, this deck, I had the issue of building it and realizing it doesn't have a plan B. And plan Bs are important. Why are they important? Is because if your opponent just plays like, 1 Lava Dart, you really realistically cannot win, right? It's very difficult for you to win. You're going to need to find your Tamiyo safekeeping, and then your opponent needs to not have any other interaction spells. So that's a lot to ask. Now, one of the things that I've seen in this deck or in these builds is that people are trying so hard to grind out and draw a million cards, right? That's one way of going back from a blowout, right? If you play your Skybreak, you play the bow, you equip, they kill it, you feel like it's a blowout, right? So you need to draw a lot of cards in order to find your interaction pieces and in order to grind out and find whatever you need. Now, the main issue with this build is that all of the 8 cards are ass. They are really, really bad. They are ass. So the Secret of Skybreak, if you are not comboing, it's just a 2-1 for 2. That's not good enough. And the Hawkeye's Bow, you don't have anything to equip it, so it's just a blank. You maybe can sacrifice extra copies with the Eviscerator's Insights. I guess that's one of the interactions you have, but it's not really that good. Now, again, if we go back to one of my builds, if we are playing Madness and we play Snacker, you can actually play and equip the Hawkeye's Bow into the Snacker and start clocking the opponent for 4. And I think this is the most powerful interaction here. Of course, by itself it's not good enough. I don't think you can build a deck without the combo and the Hawkeye's Bow and the Snacker. That doesn't make a lot of sense. We never played Bane Splitter with Sneaky Snacker, but Bone Splitter. So what you can do here is to have this as a plan B. And why is it so important as a plan B? First off, it's enabled by Bitter Union, which of course gives haste. So that's a very powerful card to have access to. You already want to play Bitter Union, and having multiple copies of them with the Sneaky Snacker means that you can just dump it for free, get a free 2-1 flyer, and then start clocking your opponent. Now, 2-1 flyers are not super fast. They don't kill that fast. But if you double the clock with one of your Hawkeye's Bows, if your opponent can't interact with the bow, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to actually stop the aggression, because you're going to attack for 4 with a recursive creature. That's very powerful. If they have just creature removal, they're going to be hard pressed into removing the Snacker in order to not die to it. And after they spend a couple of removal spells, maybe you can find a place where you can just play the Skybreak, activate the bitter reunion, equip and win, right? Especially being super important, this doesn't use combat. You can actually attack, your opponent is forced to tap out to cast down your Sneaky Snacker or whatever, and then you can just go second main phase. That means that this is a very powerful plan B. I really like it. Now, the third thing I think is very important to understand is that the original combo was a 2-for-1 if you got removed. If you play a Bruskel, you play Ugly, and you get snuffed out, and you don't have protection. In fact, as you can see in this deck, you don't really have protection since 2 Duresses. If you do this and they have the removal, you get 2-for-1. That's not ideal. That's very, very bad, in fact. If you just go for it turn 3 and they have the removal, if they have a snuff out, they have a lightning bolt, you get blown out, you have 2 less cards in your opponent. That's very, very bad. That's why it has so much card draw. You could also play Interaction, but the Interaction is not that good if you're not comboing. So instead of having a lot of interaction, what it has is a lot of card draw. There are different builds that play more interaction, of course, like the straight up Golgari build, but this is just, showing a bit of this particular build. Now, if we go back here and watch, if we watch our deck here, the Jund version of this, if you get removed, it's not a 2-for-1, right? You still have the Hawkeye's bow because it's an equipment. That's very important. Having the bow in play means that is, very powerful. You can still try to combo off next turn if you have another Secret of Skybreak, or you can use it to attack for 2 damage, right? Or do whatever you want with it. That's very powerful because it means that it's never a blowout to get removed when you're trying to combo. And I don't think I can express how important that is and how important that is going to become. That means that you can just go for it. You can just go for it turn 3 and see if they have removal. If they have removal, yeah, you'll go down maybe on 1 or 2 mana, but you don't go down on cards, right? Yeah, maybe it's a good tempo play for them, but it's not as backbreaking as being not only a tempo advantage, but also a card advantage when they get removed. So I think that with this deck, what you're going to happen is that you're going to just try to combo turn 3, If they get removed, whatever. If they don't get removed, you win. And that's scary. That's very scary because previously with Bruskel combo or with like Inside Out, whatever combo deck you want that's based on creatures, if you just have 1 mana open, maybe they don't even go for it because getting blown out, getting your Tireless Tribe removed in response to Inside Out is a 2-for-1 again. And all of that is very, very tricky. I think that is very clear. What you need to do here is to, what I mean here is that you can just go for it turn 3, for example, and if they have it, whatever. If they don't have it, you win, right? And that's going to be very important. I think that this deck is going to just win on turn 3 more often than not, just because they are going to go for it. So many times with this kind of combo decks or like with Glitters, if you remember that time, people just hold mana open for the combo, and even if they don't have anything, because you're not going to go for it because it's a 2-for-1. But here you can't do that, right? You need to have the answer, otherwise you die. And if you go for it and they don't have it, you win. And I've seen people do this on Bruskel, especially when they weren't super adept at playing, this kind of combo decks, just going for it because whatever, right? They're not going to be waiting around. They're just going to try it out, especially noobs. No disrespect to them, of course, everything is fair game, but I think that more experienced people are going to play around the potential interaction from your opponent if they can allow themselves to do that. And in this deck, it's just going to be that the best course of action is just going for the combo as early as possible, so they have less time to draw their removals, and if they have it in their hand, that's no big deal. So I think that's going to be very important. So for example, I was toying around with a couple of builds, and I was thinking like, well, you could use Tamiyo's Safekeeping is really good protection spell, but you can also just play an Earth, and an Earth is really interesting because it also can, return 1 Secret of Skybreak. It adds another vector of attack. Now you use your graveyard. Using your graveyard means that if your opponent just uses a lot of removal, they also need to have, Bojuke Box and Nihil's Weapons in play in order to stop you, and eventually that's just all interaction, and you can just win with whatever is left, right? So, I actually built that list, but I don't think I have it here. It's very similar to this one list because I think that the Unearth build actually gets better use of Hunger Scrounger as another win condition, because you can just mill it with Malevolent Rumble, for example, or discard it with Bitter Reunion and then reanimate it, and now it's way cheaper to go for it. That's really powerful. Again, you can play Secret of Skybreak, your opponent does nothing, then you unearth the Hunger Scrounger, you go for the combo, that's 1 mana that you used. You can have extra mana floating around to just protect your creatures. That's very powerful. And in order to have this combo work with the Scrounger, you don't need to have 8 pieces of fast mana. Realistically, you only need 2. You can play just 2 Lotus Petals, for example. But I could see even a build that doesn't even have fast mana. It's better because it helps you on its starting hands and accelerating sometimes 1 turn. And again, since this can kill so fast, winning with 7 cards in hand and winning with 2 is the exact same thing, right? So I think that accelerating 1 turn can be very powerful, especially with cards that use your mana in order to protect your creatures, right? So you can play a Lotus Petal and have access to Tamiyo's Safekeeping to protect your creature in the opponent's turn, and you are able to just present the combo 1 turn earlier. So I don't know if I'm missing a bit of interactions. Oh yeah, there is one more. The Hawkeye's Bow is when the creature becomes tapped, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. There are a couple of creatures that tap themselves for free. One is Nettle Sentinel. And would you look at that? That's an elf that sometimes elf decks play. Like a bit of time ago, but there were builds that played this and cards that just tap elves in order to generate mana, and then you play, your Llanowar Elves that's untap the Nettle Sentinel, and you kind of net mana that way. That's very powerful. You can build an elf deck that uses Nettle Sentinel, and Secret Skybreak again is also an elf. So that means that you can have both cards play in the same deck, especially if you play elves. Now Secret of Skybreak does something. Sometimes you can untap like a Timberwatch or Titania, and your opponent is going to, it's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be a bit harder for them to respect the combo, when you can also need to respect the Titania, you need to respect the Timberwatch elves. Elves is that kind of deck where some creatures just need to be dealt with, otherwise you just win on the spot. And it's just as another vector of attack. And if you have a Nettle Sentinel and you play the Hawkeye's Bow on it, every time you tap it for mana, basically, with your elf that generates mana when you tap elves, I don't remember the name, sorry, Visual Rangers, there we go, then you're also dealing damage to your opponent, which is fine. And the other card I have in mind is Thermal Alchemist. And Thermal Alchemist is kind of interesting because also works very well in the idea of a mono-red kind of Madness shell. And yeah, we could play this in mono-red Madness, no problem, kind of replacing Kessig Flame Breather. Is Kessig Flame Breather better? Yeah, of course, I think it's better, but Thermal Alchemist can also work with the Hawkeye's Bow because it taps to deal damage, right? And that there are a couple of builds, I don't have the list right now, that just use Thermal Alchemist. They use Gutter Snipe and a lot of burn and a lot of card draw, and they play green for the Seeker Skybreak Hawkeye's combo deck. I think those decks could also play like Mana Morphose in order to fix their mana and, for free trigger the Thermal Alchemist. Again, this is not a great combo. You couldn't do this if it wasn't for the combo, I don't think. But it's a niche interaction that kind of also put a lot of pressure on the opponent. Playing Thermal Alchemist, playing Gutter Snipe, playing Seeker of Skybreak, all of these cards require the opponent to deal with them. So that puts attacks on the opponent to remove your creatures. They're eventually going to run out of removal, and one of those creatures is going to be on the field, and is going to be able to deal a lot of damage or just win outright, which I think is kind of cool. Yeah, these decks are going to lose to, for example, I don't know, to 30 removal spells and campfires, but I don't think that's kind of a crazy reach into what can be a very good deck. So again, I'm not sure what build is going to kind of work for this, but I think that most people are just trying too hard to rebuild the Basking Brute Scale combo decks, and this is not really that because of many things. So I hope that I shed some light into my thinking process here. I hope that this helps you kind of build more synergistic decks. I think that people are trying too hard to rebuild this instead of thinking of synergies with your cards. Again, the two biggest content creators I've seen, no shade to them, they're trying their best, but they are not maximizing the value of the combo pieces. In this deck, it's just a combo piece. In this other deck of that mill guys, is just a combo piece. So I think that if you're doing that, if you're just playing 8 cards a combo, well, then maybe you can play, instead of all of this fluff, you can play cantrips, and have a lot of cantrips and dispels, and that's probably going to be the same thing. Right? Because the only use of these cards, of this color, is to interact and draw cards. You don't really need raw card advantage, so you can just play Brainstorm and Ponder and see more cards for cheaper. Eventually, you're going to find your combo pieces. I don't think that's the best way of doing this combo. As in the same vein, I don't think this is the best way of building the combo. I think that finding synergies with both of these cards is the way to go. And I want to hear from you. What do you think? What synergies do you find with Hawkeye's Bow or Seeker's Skyblade that actually make them playable, besides just, niche combo pieces? And yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of things that I wasn't able to cover. You can go watch my original video on this, where we covered a lot of different decks. Of course, it's in Spanish, but I think it has auto translation on if you're into that. So that's cool, I guess. And I'm going to try to make more videos as well here. So thank you so much. Subscribe for more, get a like, all of that thing. See you next time.